Hello, this is Pete. Welcome back to EmpowerCast. This is episode 2 of the iWork series, and we're going to explore color sliders and the crayon box here in episode 2. If you haven't already seen episode 1, I recommend that you start there. It's a great starting point to explore the color wheel and saving colors in the color tray. So we're going to dive into Pages again as our application of choice. And I'm just going to open a blank landscape page layout document. Again, this demonstration could take place in Pages, Keynote, iWeb. The application really doesn't matter, as the colors inspector will stay the same throughout. You'll remember in episode 1 we explored the color wheel and color tray, so I just started with a shape on the canvas. And we chose color fill from the graphic inspector. Once I select that swatch in the color fill area of the graphic inspector, then the color wheel is selected and I can create my color. That's the color wheel tab of the colors inspector. Today we're going to head over to the sliders tab of the colors inspector. And in the Sliders tab, we have 4 choices: Grayscale slider, RGB sliders, CMYK sliders, and HSB sliders. Let's start with Grayscale slider. Grayscale slider is a convenient way to make the brightness of your box from true white, 100% brightness, to true black, 0% brightness, and 25% stops in between with these swatches here below the slider. You can also drag and enter any value you want in the particular slider, or any particular value you want in the slider. If you have a custom gray, which I know it seems like gray is gray, but when creating logos and identities, a custom gray can be very important. So when you create a custom gray that's exactly the tone to match the project you're doing, you can remember that it's a 65% gray, or you can drag the color swatch down to your tray and save it for use later on. Next in the sliders pull-down menu is RGB sliders. RGB stands for red, green, blue, as you can see here in the inspector. And these sliders allow us to either choose the value we want by sliding the sliders. This inspector also allows us to enter a value directly into the slider value field. So I have a set of RGB swatches that I'm going to drag into the canvas here from my desktop, just to give you an example of those RGB values. So this is a chart that somebody provided for me, and you'll see the very specific colors that are required for this project and the values right next to the specific colors. So in order to duplicate that color exactly, I can take the values from that color, and in this case, it's red 255, green 219, and blue 157. And now I've created the duplicate of that color. I can fill my shape with that color by simply clicking and dragging on the swatch and dropping it right on top of the shape. That shape is now filled with that custom color. That also works in the color wheel and any of the tabs in the colors inspector. Dragging that swatch and dropping it right on top of a shape will fill that shape with that color. If I want to save that custom color to my color tray, I can drag it down into the color tray. And perhaps I want to save a variety of these various colors in their exact RGB coordinates in my project tray for the project that I'm working on. Oftentimes when you go to home improvement stores, the paint swatches that are available there list RGB values. So if you see a color you really like there, you can take the sample swatch home with you and enter the RGB value right here in Pages, and it'll duplicate that color exactly. So that's the RGB sliders. I'm just going to delete my set of RGB swatches here off the canvas. And the next sub-inspector is the CMYK sliders. And as you can see, CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and K for black. This functions in the same way as the RGB slider, where you can enter a value for each of the 4 different color blends, CMY and K for black. I have another example of a swatch, and in this case it's a CMYK color swatch. I'm just going to drag that onto the canvas so you can see. These color swatches are for paint or other type of design, and if you look closely you can see that they list values in the swatch. So it has the RGB value listed and the CMYK value listed. So this particular blue is 0, 100, 0, 0. So we're going to enter that in the CMYK values, 0, 100, 0, 0. And that will duplicate this color exactly. So I can drag that, drop it onto my shape to color it exactly like that CMYK swatch. Next, in the Colors Inspector, in the Sliders tab, we have HSB sliders. And HSB stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. So hue is a particular degree of hue, and sliding the hue slider changes the hue of the color. Saturation is the amount of color. So 100% would be having that color saturated at 100%. And then the brightness, also a percentage. So that's the hue, saturation, and brightness sliders. And keep in mind with those sliders, you can save any of the colors that you create down to your system tray. And we're going to head over to the crayon box. The crayon box is one of my favorite tools in the Colors Inspector because it gives a very simple selection of all of the primary colors and many variations of the primary colors. So you have primary green, but you have darker and lighter versions. I find that for most ordinary projects, the crayon box fits perfectly for my needs. But it is good to know I have the other tabs in the Colors Inspector when I need them. So to color an object using the crayon box, click on the swatch under Color Fill in the Graphic Inspector, and then use any of the crayons in the crayon box to color my graphic. And again, I find that this is a real useful, quick and easy tool for selecting colors in most projects. In each of the sliders and crayon box palettes we've looked at today, there's also an opacity slider allowing you to adjust the opacity of any color or object. And the opacity slider is provided in any of the tools we've used, so both crayon box and color sliders. And if there's a particular color opacity combination that you really like, so maybe this gray at 40% really works well for your project, you can also save that. We hope you've enjoyed the second episode of the EmpowerCast iWork series.